Welcome to Muddy Ruttzz. Today we're digging deeper into the front end of this 2022 Gladiator. I'm swapping out these OEM upper control arms for a set of adjustable units from MetalCloak. This is part 3 of our death wobble fix. To get started, I'll be removing these heat shields and then I'll be loosening the 2 bolts on each upper control arm. We'll get one arm out and head over to the bench and talk about why this is a must-have upgrade for any Jeep that's lifted. If you've been following along, you saw the recovery pile of parts in part 1 and the rear track bar install in part 2. Links to those videos should be up in the corner above my head, and also they are in the description. Now, a couple years back, I installed a Mopar 2-inch lift on this rig, and you can find that video on the channel too. When I talked to the tech at MetalCloak, he told me something crucial. With that lift, my caster angle was probably off, and these adjustable arms will allow me to dial that geometry back in, and that's the key to getting rid of that flighty steering and keeping the front end stable. And you can feel the heft here, that 3/16 DOM steel with this gold zinc finish. And these aren't just heavier, they use these patented Duroflex joints made with Kevlar. So I'm adding anti-seize to these threads, even though here in New Mexico, we really don't get any rust on the cars. But this is super important for you guys that are living in the states where they throw salt on the roads in the winter. If I ever want to take these apart, this anti-seize should make it so I can get that done. These Duroflex joints are built to flex off-road without wearing out on the highway. Since I mentioned the heft of the MetalCloak bar, let's get a weight comparison. The OEM bar, 4 pounds 0 ounces. Now the MetalCloak bar, 6 pounds. So you got a third more weight with the MetalCloak than with the OEM. So I got some anti-seize on the threads. Now what I need to do is match up the length, because that'll be close enough to get me to the alignment shop. I'll just match the length of this OEM bar. Now they do have a little bit of a different shape. You can see here, the bend is in a little different spot. Just a note, when I installed the Mopar lift kit, it doesn't include upper control arms, but it did include slightly longer lower control arms with the Mopar lift kit. And it was just such a fraction of a small amount that I was like, man, does that much makes a difference? But yeah, a small amount makes a big difference. And that was what the tech at MetalCloak told me. So I'm gonna add about 20 1/8 on this OEM bar. I'm gonna call this OEM bar 20 1/8. Gotta go out some. That's about 20 1/8. Now when I lay them on top of each other, the MetalCloak bar looks a lot shorter than what I measured. So I better check my measurement. Yeah, I got about the 20 1/8 there. And I got about the 20 1/8 here. But now, when I set them on top of each other, I use a drift pin to line these holes up. My hole on this side's not matching up. You can see the holes aren't matching up when I do it with a measurement. So now I have a choice to make. Should I match the holes up or should I use my measurement? I'm going to match the holes up. I think that's a better way to do it, but we'll find out when we go to install it. Leave a comment as to what you would have done, or if you already know, leave a comment what's the right way to do it. Okay, I got about a perfect match here now. The holes are lined up. Let's see if that works. We'll find out when we go to install it. MetalCloak includes instructions, but the golden rule here is don't pull both bars at once. Your axle could rotate. Loosen everything first, and then swap these bars one by one. It's a tight squeeze, but it's a good project for any DIYer with a good set of wrenches. My best guess at the hole measurement over on the bench wasn't that great, so it required some adjustment to fit the bar in. My drift pins really helped, but I had to pull the bar out a couple times to adjust the bushing in and out. But eventually I got the right combination, got the holes right distance apart, and got both bolts in. I got the axle side torqued to 80 pounds. Now I just got to get this side, frame side, torqued to 80 pounds. Okay. Got our 80 foot-pounds here. Well, we got one MetalCloak upper control arm installed. I just have to lock this nut down. I'm going to have to get a wrench that fits that. My big crescent won't go in there. I got the bolts torqued. One down, one to go. Now we're working on getting this factory upper control arm out. This heat shield covers the bolt. I got it loose already. There's a bolt on the top that's pretty difficult to get at. I found the best tool for reaching up in here and getting that top 10mm bolt out is this 10mm speed wrench. I got this bolt all the way loose. Just going to remove this. Now there's one more issue we might run into with this upper control arm frame side bolt here, trying to get this bar off of here, is this bolt may not be able to come all the way out. MetalCloak provides a different bolt to use with the new upper control arm. So on this passenger side upper control arm, there's much better access to get at these nuts and bolts. The FAD, F-A-D, has its wire hooked to this upper control arm over here. Here's another view of the pushpin that holds that FAD wire onto the upper control arm. Pushpins are easy to remove with a panel trim removal tool. Access was a little difficult, but without that panel trim removal tool, I'd probably be still there trying to get that wire off the UCA. On the driver's side, I had the diff in the way, so I couldn't get access to the upper control arm bolt through the front of the Jeep. On this upper control arm bolt on the passenger side, I'll be able to get some access up here from the passenger side, or from the front of the Jeep, and that might make it a little easier to get this one off and to also install a new bar. Let me get cracking and get this bolt out, then we'll work on that frame side bolt in the back. Even with a little better access to the passenger side UCA to axle connector bolt, it was still a little bit of a struggle, but I managed to get it. I got my backup socket on one side, and I was able to remove that nut. A little tap of the hammer, and I got that bolt removed. Well, I got it out, so I didn't have to get my Sawzall and cut it. I feel like the cladding, edge on that cladding got bent over. It may not go back in, but we have a bolt that's supplied by MetalCloak to replace it if it doesn't. That saved us having to grab the Sawzall. So there we go. Upper control arm number 2 is removed. So we'll do a quick adjustment process on this one to match the hole-to-hole measurement on the OEM. But before I do that, I just want to mention, now the MetalCloak has a bend. It's in a little different spot than on the OEM. They both have bends, but the OEM upper control arms, they bend two ways. They bend this way, and then they also shoot off to one side. And the bushing is not completely centered. So if you're planning on using these again, you're taking them off, or you're going to use them on a different vehicle, give them to a buddy, make sure you remember which one's left and right. Save yourself a lot of trouble in installing these. So you want to put the left on the left and the right on the right, or passenger and driver side. But I'm just going to get this measurement, and so I got about 20 3/16, let's call it, 20 1/8. So I'm going to get that same measurement on my new MetalCloak bar. I'm going to try to shoot for that measurement here. On the first one, I had a little different method. What I did on the first one is I set it on top and I matched up the holes. And that didn't work out too good because I had to adjust this underneath the vehicle when I went to install it on the driver's side. I'm going to measure it this time. So I'm going to try to get that same 20 3/16 or so. They've got some pretty fine threads, so it adjusts really well. Really well-made piece of equipment. And I'm going to say, I'm digging that. I'm going to maybe take one more turn. Let's see. That's going to be about it. We might have to do some fooling around with this underneath the Jeep. That should get us ballpark. And then don't forget, I'm not adjusting this 100% because it's going to go to an alignment shop. By the time I get done putting all the parts I've got on here, I'm going to have to find myself a really good alignment guy because there's going to be a lot of adjusting to do. All right, anyways, let's get this thing installed. So we'll be shooting for here, the axle mount on the passenger side for one end of the bar. For the other end of the bar, we're shooting for here. I get a bolt in this side, or maybe a drift pin to start, and then see how well our hole-to-hole measurement was adjusted. So I got it started with a drift pin, so I'm in ballpark area there. I think I'll try to get my bolt in this axle side. There we go. My bolt pushed my drift pin out. Use a little gentle persuasion to get this bolt all the way through. There we go. That'll hold it for now. So I had to shrink this upper control arm. I had to thread this this bushing back in a little bit to get it to line up with this hole. I got my bolt on the axle side. What I realized is I thought about using the old bolt over and shoving it in. That's not going to work, but MetalCloak provides you with this new bolt, and that bolt is going to go in through. So the new bolt will go in through this hole in the frame right here, and that's why I have this bolt on a pair of vice grips, so I can shove that through. Turns out my vice grips didn't fit through the opening in the frame, so I taped a bolt to a socket and the socket to an extension. It didn't matter because the shoulder diameter on the MetalCloak provided bolt was too big to go through the inside hole. Only the threads would pass through into the bushing. I was left with a choice to drill the frame a little larger or use the OEM 18mm bolt. I had a little bit of a problem bolting the frame side of this upper control arm from MetalCloak on. What ended up happening is they supplied this bolt, and this shoulder would not go through the hole in the frame. The threads would go through, but the shoulder would not go through. What I ended up doing is I took the original bolt, which I was able to get out, which most people usually have to cut off to get it out of here, and I shoved it in through the frame side, and I torqued the bolt down, and then I cut off the remainder because you still have to be able to get this heat shield on. And I'm going to make it now. But because this bolt went into a flag nut, it had a little extra on, so the robot in the factory was able to guide that in real easy and get it started. I ended up cutting the end, just stuck it through, tightened it up, and cut off whatever excess was there. And now I could still get my heat shield on. So anyways, that's been the only thing that didn't really work out. Otherwise, everything's good. I'm going to torque the other side now, put my heat shields back on, and I'll be all done. Well, that wraps up the upper control arms. It's one more piece in the puzzle of making this Gladiator drive better than when it left the showroom floor. We still have a few more heavy hitters to install before we take it to the alignment shop and see if we've officially killed the death wobble. If your Jeep ever started shaking like it hit a 7.0 on the Richter scale, tell me about it in the comments. How'd you fix it? Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next install video. I'm Muddy Ruttzz, and remember, the best is yet to come.